On November 6, 1860, the gentlemen of Charleston stood outside the offices of the Charleston Mercury, awaiting the results of the presidential election. More than 3 decades of strife and growing tension between the southern states and the federal government had come down to a single vote. Already, South Carolina's political leaders had declared that if Abraham Lincoln were elected, the state would secede from the Union. 45 days later, South Carolina became the first state to do just that. In St. Andrew's Hall on Broad Street, an ordinance of secession was approved unanimously. That action started a chain of events that dragged this country into its darkest days. No other city's history is so closely tied to the American Civil War as Charleston. It was in Charleston that the United States Army first reacted to the secession, retreating from Fort Moultrie to Fort Sumter. And it was here that the state militia took Castle Pinckney and the U.S. Arsenal, which the federal government interpreted as a direct act of aggression. And it was in Charleston that the first shots were fired on Fort Sumter, beginning what for most Americans became a 4-year nightmare. In that time, Charleston would come under attack numerous times, ultimately enduring a siege that lasted more than 500 days. The city did not fall until the final months of the war, by which time the Confederacy had become a lost cause. In Charleston at War, the Post and Courier recounts the city's role in the conflict and examines what it was like to live through the war between the states. These stories focus not only on the military and the lives of soldiers, but also on regular citizens and slaves who made up more than a third of the city's population at that time. The 20-part serial is based almost entirely on the contemporary reportage of the Charleston Mercury, the newspaper most closely tied to the causes of secession and war.